Guess who's back, 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 back. Guess who's back? Back. Guess who's back? Back. Guess who's back?
We have a Google Classroom. So it's a platform. So it would be like you entering my class.
Okay.
But you're not allowed, we don't give grades. We just give feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because there's going to be an issue between kids that should pass because they're doing all the work and those kids who either don't have internet or can't go and pick up packets. So that's going to be the big discussion.
Yeah, today in Pennsylvania, they just canceled school for the year. So I guess they're going to figure out how to handle that situation. I don't know how they could, though, fairly, though.
Mm-hmm.
So do you guys do one-to-one? We're one-to-one. So every kid that goes to the school I attend has an iPad. We give them for the year, we give them the iPad. So they have the technology. It's now getting them the internet.
Right.
And now they're like saying you can go to the library, but everybody's not going to the library and sitting in a parking lot.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Well, what do you mean by one-to-one? Like, do you mean what specifically do you mean?
when I say one-to-one, so every kid has a device and I have a device. So even when we had face-to-face schooling, I gave all of their homework was on their device.
Oh, like through man, I'm trying to remember like all the sites and stuff, like the Google Docs and whatnot. Okay.
Yeah, like Google Classroom.
And then
so
you would share the documents and stuff when you finish them. That's interesting because I've been out of school for about 5 years now, so it's kind of interesting that everybody has a computer now. I mean, I was in school districts where they had a lot of technology, but I've been in districts where they only had like one Chromebook cart between the whole entire school, which is where I graduated from in rural Pennsylvania. So
that's a little house on the prairie, though, Dev. There's only like
I couldn't even imagine.
Little house on the prairie, coach.
That's horrible. But like the school I teach at, they gave me. I have an Apple Air something. I can actually look at it because I was doing some work on it.
Yeah.
MacBook Air, and then they gave me an iPad, a large iPad. So I have all the technology I need.
That's pretty crazy. Like, I mean, they're just handing that stuff out for the educational purposes, that's cool because like I said, I'm actually genuinely intrigued how people are being educated right now because of the virus. I wonder how that even works because, like you said, you're not giving out grades. So, I mean, you're basically just educating them and they're doing it at their own discretion. Like, is it an attendance sheet or?
Well, I do an attendance sheet. Like, they have to fill out a Google form once a week. I only take attendance once every week. So
Wow.
you fill it out and say, I was here this week. And then I give them assignments. So I give them all their assignments on Monday. And they have until Friday to get it done.
Okay, gotcha. All right, well, let's go ahead. Let's introduce the show. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's Dev here and Coach B. You know who it be. We'll say what's up with them, Coach.
What's going on, peoples?
All right, and we have our special guest today, Marlisse Hardamon. Am I saying that right? Hardamon?
Hardamon, yeah.
Hardamon, okay. And you are a Project Women's 2019 or 2019. Oh my goodness, if I could say that word, Chrysalis Award winner.
Chrysalis Award winner.
Chrysalis. Oh man, now I feel even worse. Okay, Chrysalis Award winner and CEO and founder of Transformation Speaks. And Transformation Speaks. Let's just start with that. Tell us a little bit about what Transformation Speaks is.
Okay, Transformation Speaks. It started. It's kind of evolving,
Okay.
but it started out as a platform in which I did public speaking, and I talked about issues related to child abuse, sexual assault, because I'm a victim or a survivor. It depends on what side you stand on, of sexual assault and child abuse. So I would go into women's prisons. I've been into juvenile centers. I went to schools. I went to the State Department last year, and I basically told them my story and explained why there was a need to give more funding and support women and men who have been victimized. And so that was the beginning. And since the coronavirus, I began moving into life coaching because I'm finding that there are women who need support right now, and they need more than me standing on a stage saying, you can do it. I did it. You can do it. They need someone to actually hold their hand and walk them through that process of healing.
Yeah.
So that's what Transformation Speaks now.
Well, go ahead.
There's a big need for that, a huge need for that, especially in the prisons. As somebody's coming in because they're not getting the help that they need, and let's go with that saying, hurt people hurt people. If you're not getting that hurt, that hurt that's inside of you, some kind of support and understanding, which we know is being lacked in the prison system, they just come back out to that vicious cycle again. So it's definitely a need that's there. It's very needful in that sense. So a quick question. You said about child abuse. This is a question I've been trying to get answered for, I don't know, probably like since the lockdown started or shutdown, whatever we call it. Are the CYS for the kids? I'm speaking for the kids. Is CYS boots to the ground? Because let's be honest, a lot of the kids, the reason why they're okay is because they're going to school, or they might get to be able to report something. Are these kids? Is CYS going in harder checking on these kids to make sure that they're all right at this point?
And actually, no. What they're telling teachers who are online is that, if you see something when you're doing when you're doing a Skype or you're doing a Zoom, and you see something that makes you concerned, then you're a mandated reporter. You need to say something. But a lot of what they're relying on because of the lockdown or shelter in place is for those mandated reporters who still have access to these kids to actually say something about what's going on. But because we know this is a traumatic time for everybody, people are losing their jobs, it's actually increasing the amount of abuse that is going on in America, but no one's saying anything about it because it's not the economy and it's not directly related to the COVID virus. It's not like you're going to die from it right away. It's a mental health issue that they don't want to deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was gonna say, because that was one of the questions I was gonna have is, do you think that number is going up? And you've clearly just answered it for me, because you got to think about it. And Coach brought this point up. I believe, who were we talking with? Was it Guy, or was it when we were talking with? Oh heck, we've interviewed so many people now this past week, I forget them. But anyway, he brought this up, the point that, with kids being home all the time, and then and the parents being there with them at home, and maybe skating away from some of those abusive situations, they're now home 24/7, stuck there with no escape really, because they have nowhere else to go, and they're not supposed to be out and about and on the street and doing things. So it's a poignant point that you make. That a lot of people could be dealing, and these numbers for these horrible things that happen could go up, and very much are going up during this time.
And just the stress alone, if you're worried about how you're going to pay the bills and how you're going to get food in the house, and then you've got some kid, a 7-year-old's going to be a 7-year-old. They're going to run under your feet. They're going to talk when you want them to be quiet. And so it just leads to a more stressful environment. And people who don't know how to deal with that stress and that anxiety are going to leash out on their spouses, their children, to release that stress.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And no one's going to know.
Yeah, I was trying to get answers to that since this started, because I grew up in the system. I know a lot of people that I thank God got through it with not too much bad happening to me, but I know a lot of people that have. My struggles, worked in mental health, worked in similar things like drug rehabs and stuff like that, and just know that the abuse that people go through, that they just can't get the story out, and even as an adult, so imagine how it was for them as a kid. And it was just that was where my mind went. My thought went to, what are the kids, when I first heard it, like after I thought, like, okay, shut down, I can't do this, I can't do that, and then it went to, what are these kids going to do that are out here getting abused, that can't come outside of that abusive situation, that maybe gave them some kind of relief or whatever. And it was just a concern of like, how is that going to be treated? So yeah, I definitely hope that they can figure that out and find a way to make sure all those kids are safe.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on a side tangent here, and then we'll probably break it down, because I feel like after this, I'm gonna ask Marlisse to tell, if she will, tell us her story, about her growing up and upbringing. And I want to know also too, the moment you said you were a victim, but now you're a victor, and I want to know when that moment came. But I want to just do this to lighten the mood up. When I was younger, I played baseball for a year when I was like 4th grade, and I got a shiner in my left eye. Well, I went into the school, and they asked, like, they looked at me, because I was literally playing catch. I was playing catch with my stepdad, and I ball hit me in the eye, gave me a black and blue eye. And they all surrounded me, the principal, like all the teachers in my grade, and they said, Devin, how did you get that black and blue eye? And I looked at him and I said, I was playing baseball and I got a shiner, which made it worse, obviously. I didn't know that at the time. I was in 4th grade, right? I didn't know that I was making my case even worse. But they were looking at me like, oh yeah, they said, is that what your dad told you to tell you? I'm like, no. I said, I got a shiner, I got a black and blue eye from it. So 2
I
weeks.
didn't catch the ball.
Yeah, exactly. 2 weeks go by. 2 weeks. And guess what happens? A pop fly comes up, bam, black and blue eye in the same eye. Go back in. I have all of them surrounding me. Like, Devin, they like sit me in the office this time. It wasn't like stop me out in the hallway. They pull me in the office. Devin, you're in a safe place. You can tell us. I said, okay. When I was at baseball practice yesterday, somebody, like, a pop fly came up and hit me in the eye. And then my mom told me this story, but eventually they called her and also the baseball team to confirm that I had gotten the black and blue eye. I didn't know it because, of course, why would I care? I was like in 4th grade. I didn't really know why. But I thought that was kind of like a little funny story, I guess, a little spin on it where, I guess it kind of panned out that I actually had a black and blue eye from a baseball and not from someone hitting me. So, Marlisse, now with that being said, could you please tell us the story, if you would, about your upbringing and everything? It's gonna be a hard story to tell, but I think it's gonna be worth it.
Okay. And I do always take that deep breath before because it's still, I mean, even though it has been time and I have made lots of strides, it's still tough because it's like I hear it and I think, wow, really? Um, so it began probably at the age of 6. My mother was running away from my father. He was abusive to her. He didn't hit us, but he did on a regular basis take all his frustrations on her. So we moved from Columbus, Ohio, where I was born, to Springfield, Ohio, and We went to live with her friend and her family. So it was her husband, and their children. And for the first 2 years, everything was great. It was like finally somewhere safe. The only thing I could complain about, and I didn't really understand, is we were dirt poor.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when you have to live with someone, I think I wore hand-me-downs. I didn't know what a new pair of shoes looked like. I didn't know what new anything looked like. But at least we were safe. So probably about my 8th birthday, I got my first new outfit since we moved from my dad. Um, and I was so excited. We ended up having a birthday party and it was just her family, her kids and my sister. And I thought, but it was great. I got my own slice of pizza. And since I had been away from my father, who gave us everything, um, I hadn't had that. So it was just wonderful. So I ended up that night, everybody was expected to go and take a bath, and I had went upstairs. It was my turn. And as I can remember running the water and hearing someone pushing on the door. And I turned around to, see, like I hadn't locked the door. And I went to lock it. And as I did, the husband of my mother's friend pushed his way in to the bathroom. And I remember him pushing me down onto the floor and the smell of urine.
Mm.
Um, and he assaulted me, and then walked out, like it was normal. It was every day. Um, and he turned around and told me, if you say anything, you'll never see your mom again. And that stuck with me. Um, and he continued to sexually assault me probably on a weekly basis. Um, and eventually his wife kind of figured out what was going on. And I could hear them hollering at night, arguing back and forth. And I always would hear my name. So I'm thinking, okay, somebody's standing up for me.
Right.
Because I dare not tell my mom because she had already gone through so much. Um, so after they argued and argued and argued, I noticed that she changed the way she started treating me. And for example, if I made it to lunch late, if I was the last one in the house, I didn't get to eat my lunch. I had to wait till everybody ate, and then I ate the food that they left on their plate. That was my lunch. If I didn't, if she asked me to do something and I didn't do it quick enough, she would make me sit for hours in a hind catcher position behind the couch.
Well, I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, why do you think she did this?
Yeah.
Because she, and the only thing I could figure is when she wasn't leaving her husband, even though I believe she knew what was happening to me was wrong. Um, so if you can't punish him or deal with him, then it has to be it had to have been my
Your,
fault. That, yeah.
and
And
it's a
that's,
sick,
Sick,
twisted,
thing.
yes.
jealousy thing too. Yeah.
Um, I would, her granddaughter, when she started school, she would have me walk home for lunch and pick up her granddaughter. And there were times I would walk home and it would be almost below zero. No gloves, no hat, because we were poor. And I dare not, like I said, I dare not complain because my mother was truly doing the best that she could do. She was like a nurse's aide, so she wasn't making much money.
Mm-hmm.
And she was thinking that she finally found somewhere safe for her family to be. And that lasted for 2 years. So, I mean, he literally, it was very painful. But at least at that point, I'm like 10 years old. So kids bounce back. And I just kind of shoved that when my mother finally said, "Hey, we're moving," I was just like happy. I'm out of this. It's
Yeah.
over. Stuff it in that deep, dark place, shut the door, and, move on. But what happened was when I turned 16, I was babysitting. Um, and they came home drunk. The wife went upstairs. The husband came to where I was, and this is a very vivid memory. So I was laying on the couch, and I tried to turn over, like my whole body. When the hairs on your back of your neck stand up, and they tell you something bad is about to happen. So I tried to turn over and go to sleep. And when I finally woke up, I couldn't move. And he was laying on top of me. And he stuffed money in my mouth and proceeded to sexually assault me. And I lay there. And I think that was from being younger, being sexually assaulted. I learned you shut up, you keep your mouth closed, and let whoever do whatever they're going to do, and you live through it. So when he finally got done, I can remember crawling to the bathroom, the downstairs bathroom, and trying to, wash myself off, take the money out of my mouth. And I can just remember putting my hands over my mouth and just crying and sobbing and sobbing. Um, I took the rag that I had wiped myself off with, and I like literally buried it in the bottom of the trash, and then made my way back to the couch. And I didn't lay on the couch, I laid on the floor in a fetal position. And I just laid there. Finally, when morning came, and I want to go home. Just take me home. When I got home again, because this was a friend of my mother's, I chose, I'm not going to say anything, just stuff this too. But what I found is it began to eat at me. And I started taking drugs to get up, drugs to go to sleep. I I I drank, I cussed, any at-risk behavior that a person could engage in, I engaged in. I was My mother's very spiritual. And so we grew up with that, with going to church and you're not allowed to kill yourself. So I tried to find other ways to kill myself without actually
Doing it.
it being my fault.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
You know,
does.
I
Yeah.
didn't want to be the person that did it, but if I drunk myself into, death, then that was accidental. You know, that wouldn't be held against you. Somehow, by grace, I did make it to college. Not quite sure how. Still, drinking, uh, doing drugs, very angry, very bitter, until I decided I wanted to be a teacher. I at least discovered, there are certain things you can't do. Like you're going to take a drug test, so you can't be high if you're going to be a teacher.
Right.
So I learned very quickly to do other things to numb the pain. And I was that way until I want to say I met my husband, and I met him in college. And to this day, I don't even understand why he would want to deal with someone who was crazy, because I was truly mentally ill.
Right.
But he stayed with me, and when I would go to parties and literally get so drunk that I would fall down, he would say, guys, stay away from her. That's my girlfriend. I'm gonna get her right back to the dorm. You leave her.
Leave her
You
alone.
leave her be. So he became my kind of like protector. But he would never engage like why I was so crazy, why I drunk so much, why I was so angry. He just was content to protect me in my world of craziness. I got out of college, got a teaching. I did some subbing, which again allowed me, if you sub, you don't get drug tested, and I wasn't doing like hard drugs. I would like just drink and drink and drink. That became my drug of choice, but it was still a drug.
Right.
Right.
So that continued for about, oh goodness, about, so I was about 32, and we decided we were going to give this church thing a real try. And I met a pastor, and he decided to take me through the 12-step program. He
Right
said,
on.
there is so much more to you than you know. So I wouldn't be doing any justice to you or any justice to your future if I keep letting you do what you're doing. So he walked me through the 12-step program. He became my advocate. I called him up, cussed him out.
Right.
I mean, because I was angry. And I finally could open up about the anger, and it was like throwing up. It just all started coming out, and I couldn't control it. But he was willing to listen to it, and he was willing to take the anger and the bitter and all of the junk that came out of me. And I think that became the point when I started healing, when I started moving from that victim to victor. And because I do teach, I latch on to books. So he began, giving me book even after I finished that the steps. He began to say, now you need to read this book, and now you need to read this book. Because he knew if I read it, I would act upon it.
Right.
I'm just not the kind of person who reads something and just closes it. So I began to heal myself looking at the material and reading and saying, okay, that's me, seeing myself in those books. And it just became a process to, I'm at the place where I'm at now, where I'm trying to give back, trying to reach back and grab the people that are still living in that darkness and say, you know, there is a better way. You know, if you can just come along with me, I can show you at least what I've done to get where I'm at. And maybe if you do it, you can find just a little more light in your world.
Yeah. So before we move on to actually starting about Transformation Speaks a little bit more in depth, I kind of want to pause it here because, you know, your story's brought to me several questions. And first off, you know what I mean? Like, I'm happy that you are where you are now and everything. That's fantastic. I'm glad where you're at right now in life. That's awesome. And I'm sorry for all the tragedy, but I wanted to ask about this. So you said you had a lot of anger build up, you know, and the books and all the things you read were kind of your way of coming through it. Was that a way for, how would I put it? Was that a way for you, those books, like the pastor was giving you, right? Was that a way of holding you accountable almost to make you, he was like, here's this book, read this information and digest it, and you would use that information, and he constantly kept one on you kind of as a, do you think that was what it was, kind of like an accountability thing?
Yeah, and we would have like sessions. He wouldn't just like give me the book and walk away and give me another book when I got done. We would actually have meetings where we would sit and talk, and I would scream and holler. I spent a lot of time.
I could just, I'm sorry, I'm just picturing you like reading the book. He says something, you're like, well, I don't effing this and effing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I mean, one of the big things that stands out in my mind is one time I cussed him out in the church in his office, and the choir was singing, and they were like, what? When I came out, they were like, what's wrong with her?
Yeah, right.
And it's funny because now I'm a minister, and it's like a lot of people, you know, refuse to let you live past where you were. And some people remind me every now and then, girl, you remember when you cussed out the pastor in his office? And I'm like,
yeah, that was me.
I got a question on that. Was the pastor, without saying, you know, going into depth, was this a since he knew so much about it? Because in my experience with a lot of pastors, there's only a few, I've dealt with them in many scenarios, that they tend to stay away from that program. They just say that just follow the Bible and go with God. They choose to treat it with that. A lot that I've met, not saying all. Was this another addict helping an addict situation?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. So it makes sense that he was giving you that information and being able to walk you through it. So
right.
that's awesome. And those type of books, I've read those books. I've sat and watched meetings. I've attended meetings myself. I've seen how they work, and I've seen how the structure of it is. It does make you face what you have to face. If you go through the process of those things, and you have somebody, thank God you had somebody with you, and they were helping you with that process. It could tear down some things, and once you get to that other side, help build you back up.
Right. And it, I mean, it's not an easy process. It really, it is not. And I would be honest to say, if you're going to try it, you better try it with somebody with you or a group of somebody. I do understand why they have meetings, because you really do need to do that in community.
Right. Yeah. I want to read out a comment we got here from Guy Ramsey Jr. He said, "Thank you, Miss Hardamon. She's married. Anyway, for sharing the story. You're helping so many people just by willing to tell your story. And like I said again, yeah, thank you, because I know that it must be hard telling the story. But I mean, it's gonna be impactful because there are people personally that I know who watch our show who have been dealing with these kind of things, and I wish them healing and all of that. So it's good to hear that I'm not alone kind of conversation in that whenever you hear someone else say it. So again, I appreciate you so much for that. But I had another question because this relates back to what you said about the anger. You said that's when, but I want to ask, what was it that made you realize that you weren't the victim but the victor? I mean, you said you were angry, and I don't know where that anger came from, but I'm kind of curious to find out. I mean, where were these emotions at? What made you come to that realization that you were the victor and not the victim?
Because part of what I learned is you got to tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you tell your story, and even now for me, even though it's hard replaying it, it separates me, at least, it separated me from the story. And you begin to realize I wasn't wearing booty shorts. I wasn't, in my bra and panty. I wasn't. I was 8 years old. I wasn't running around
Right.
being provocative. So you're not responsible for the things that happen to you. Sometimes you're only responsible for how you respond to them.
Right. Yeah.
So when I began to look at what happened to me, I began to realize I'm not responsible. I didn't invite anybody in anywhere. And I was angry. My anger came from the fact that I began to understand they didn't have a right to do what they had done.
No.
Right.
Absolutely.
And plus, it happening at such an early age.
Right.
I see a cycle of you said 8 to 16. That's like an 8-year average. The first 8 years, obviously, I mean, you're young, you don't know too much, and then you're starting to process it, and you're feeling like, okay, that was just the phase of my life, and then it happens again. Now that's carrying you all the way through your adulthood when you're turning into adult, where that makes that a core belief of yours. Mm-hmm. So when you have to go sit down and face all that stuff, that's going to make it 10 times harder to actually start that healing process. So I'm just glad you got to that phase to be able to do that with some people around you that could help you. A question that I have about it now, do you as you're saying, like, how they say in that hope part of it in the program is like, to keep it, you got to give it away. So when you're seeing, do you recognize some of this stuff in your students, like behaviors that you might have? Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of what drew me to teaching, is because I wanted to, even in my victimhood, there was a part of me that said, I don't want anybody else to go through what I've been through without someone else standing in the gap.
Right.
And I teach high school, so those girls are verbal, and there are cues that they give off that say, some stuff has happened to me that I can't talk about, but sometimes I just, like, I get in trouble all the time. They tell me all the time, you're not supposed to touch kids. But if a kid needs a girl, I mean, there are appropriate hugs, and I'm very aware of those.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if you need a hug, I'm going to give you a hug.
Yeah, that happened a lot in my hometown.
Walk up to me, yeah. So I just want to be that voice that says, I see you.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that where Transformation Speaks come in? Is that what that's about right there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us how what your mission is. Obviously it's part of that, but I when I looked at it, I kind of got my idea of it of like the transformation. The name sounds great. speaking out. Is that what we're looking at here? Like moving on to another level and dealing with all your things and looking at things differently?
Transformation, and it's really funny. I did not pick that name.
Okay.
Several years ago, a lady in Washington, who I was just putting quotes and information on Facebook, just random. And she emailed or messaged me a logo that looks very similar to the logo that I have now. I've had a couple of people tweak it. And she said that she felt a real desire. She actually said God told her to send me this logo, that I was going to use it. And I was like, well, thank you very much, but I'm not going to use what am I going to do with it? And it wasn't until probably about 4 years later that I picked up the logo, because I left it and I pulled it out of an email, and I was like, oh, I get it. Transformation, that's me. And I'm going to speak. I'm going to speak to other people, and they're going to transform. So it should be a cycle, right? Transformation.
Right. When I hear the word transformation, it fits very appropriately, because you're taking something that's something else and it's becoming something different.
Right.
And you're speaking that into existence. And as I'm aware, you do public speaking. You speak at events and stuff? Okay. Because I thought I saw that from your site, and you have 2 speaking topics that you put on the website. The Tapestry of a Survivor, and then Living Life on Your Own Terms. And I kind of want you to talk about that one a little bit, but which of those are your favorite, like, to talk about? Like, which one of those 2 is like you prefer to talk about that one?
Well, it depends on really who I'm talking to.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm talking to young people, it's always about living life on your own terms, because I feel like I teach them and talk to them about not living life like someone tells you to, like Facebook or Instagram, where you're showing parts of your body that you really need to keep private.
Right.
Because you need to build your own self-esteem. You need to decide what you are going to accept and what you're not going to accept. Because many of the young girls, and since that's who I work with, tell me stories about sexual advances that they didn't want, but they were too afraid to say no, because they didn't want to be looked down upon, and taking pictures that they didn't necessarily want to take, but the more popular kid or the athlete told them, do this or you're not going to be popular. So living life on your terms is about telling you, it's about what makes you feel good. Living your life so you don't have to be ashamed at the end of the day when you look in the mirror.
Right. That as soon as you have that inclination, that feeling that says, I don't want to do this, you just listen to that feeling. Like, you just say, I'm not doing this. That's like that living life on your own terms, pretty much.
Right.
Take charge. Don't be a follower. And it's saying that you said something that jumped out to me. That was a question I was going to have that I wrote down, and it was saying in the manner of the social media thing. To me, the social media phase right now, you mentioned it, that people feel pressured that they have to take certain pictures because they're seeing people do that. And the false, I guess I want to say, approval of the likes, how they're addicted to likes that get them to say, oh, this picture only got 25 likes, and Cheryl got 107 because she had a smaller top on. I'm putting a smaller top on, so I can get that attention and all that. And I think that magnifies. Now, we know, like what you said about hey, the football guy says if you don't do this, you're not going to be cool. That's always been the case. But this social media stuff is magnifying that times 100. That these girls are doing, especially girl. I'm just gonna, especially girls, because I think dudes are using that as a tool to more pressure out of the girls, and it's getting way out of control. Some of the things I see, because I was a coach all my year. I worked in youth development, so I have a lot of young kids that are on my page at times where I have to go say, "Hey, man, take that down. What are you doing? You can't do that." Or you maybe reach out to a parent or a grandparent and say, come on, you got to talk to them about this, because I'm seeing these things in front of my eyes. Like, how is this happening like this? How is this so easy to be accepted in today's society where it's nothing to them? No.
And unfortunately, I think our society has gone numb to that issue of sexual assault, where first you weren't allowed to talk about it.
Right.
Like when I grew up, you just didn't talk about it. What happens at home stays at home, and you don't talk about it. But now society is numb to it. And like you even see things on prime time that you would never, ever see. And it just is suggestive, and we kind of teach young women that it's okay. Right. That if you want to be like, put as little clothes as you can on and just don't talk, just smile.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they're doing that, and it bothers me, and it ought to bother society, but it doesn't.
Yeah, well, I like what you say, the word numb, but it's also more like deaf, because I think a lot of people hear it, but they just, because back then, like you said, no one talked about it, right? But now people are talking about it, but they're just not listening. Like they have the apathy toward it. They have no emotion or feeling toward it, because it happens, it happens. So, and the crazy thing is, like I'm saying, is because I have a lot of friends that have been dealing with this, especially female friends, and it's just sad how many there are that are, like, even in my generation where everyone's supposed to be talking about it, how many of them there are that are dealing with these things, and they keep those things a secret, and that the perpetrators of those things get away with the stuff. So it's interesting.
Isn't there a stat on it, like a 1 out of every? I think I've seen that before. Do you know that?
It's like hold on, let me think about it again. It is somewhere like 6 out of every 10 women before the age of 18 will be sexually assaulted. Now, here's the other one that people don't deal with. 5 out of every 15 men will be sexually assaulted before they hit the age of 18. And no one even looks at that.
Talks about that.
That's really scary.
That's a good point, because especially in the Black community, it's like taboo. Yeah. It's taboo in the Black community, and I think that's one thing that I kind of look at somebody like, I don't know if you're familiar with who Charlamagne the God is. He started coming out and saying that he was sexually assaulted when he was younger. He started talking about PTSD, the things that keep men from doing things, especially in the Black community, not going to therapy and treating those things. And now people started to come out and start to deal with those issues and saying, you know what, why have we trapped our kids for this for so long, for them not to get the proper help that they need? And I think a lot of grown men are walking around here, again, hurt people. They're going to hurt other people because they never went and dealt with that. So that is a key thing right there, that men are going to be less likely to go get some help for it. And I think that's a very good point right there.
And if you think about this, is even scarier because it goes to what you just said. The statistics say that out of 2 perpetrators, 1 of them was a victim.
So it's like you said, hurt people, and it's a cycle, because they dealt with it, so they felt the way to deal with it was to pass that pain almost on to someone else and do the same thing.
Right.
As a way of coping.
And they're looking for that some power somewhere, because the power, when you become a victim, your power is taken from you, and that's a way of getting it back, is
Right.
to take someone else's power. So
Is there any advice that you would give to say there's some young person? Deb mentioned he has some friends. Maybe they're watching right now. Is there an advice that you could give on maybe how they could go about approaching it, to go to talk to somebody about it, to start that process?
um, if you've already been victimized, the first thing I'd say is you've got to trust somebody, and they may let you down. You may tell them your story and they may turn away from you. But until you get that story out of you and out into the atmosphere, you won't heal. It's kind of like a sword. As long as you have the Band-Aid on it, even though it won't get dirty, it will never heal.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have to expose it to air. You have to expose your pain to air. And trust that, I might tell it and they may hurt me by me sharing it with them. Or they may, hurt my feelings by not accepting it or not believing me. But you have got to find someone to pull that Band-Aid off, even if it rips off some of your hair and you're screaming and hollering, just to let it get air, because then healing can begin.
Holy heck, that was a beautiful analogy. That was gorgeous. I think we have to end it on that note, I think, Coach, unless you have something else.
No, that's pretty much. I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing. And you got any plugging to do? You got information where they can reach you?
Um, Trent, you can either go to my website, transformationspeaks.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. If you need someone to talk to and you want to know, they won't let you down. I'm not going to let you down. And I'm not going to charge you anything for you to heal, because no one charged me. And I just believe in giving away what I've been given.
Got to give
And
it
I've
away to
been
keep
given
it.
my life back. So I just want you to have the same thing.
All right, Marlisse, you've been awesome. And also, guys, I have already linked your website and your Facebook group in the chat above. So anybody, if you read the description of this, you can please go to her group if you're someone looking out for answers or people to talk to. Also, I did give the link to her website, and you can find out information to where to contact Marlisse. But again, Marlisse, you've been absolutely fantastic. As always, everybody out there, stay beautiful, take care of yourselves. Have a great rest of your evening. See ya.